Hi, I'm Chris, and I want to teach you how to play modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But I think this video will be much more applicable to other types of games as well. To start, have you ever played chess? I promise I'm going somewhere with this. In chess, both players are moving pieces on a grid with the ultimate goal of capturing the opponent's king. Each piece moves in a distinct way, and there is limited board space. Chess is considered to be a game where both players have perfect information, because every piece and possible move can be seen by both players at all times, and there is a limited amount of spaces and choices players can make at certain points of the game. Thus, chess is a game where you try to outsmart your opponent, plan ahead of them, and speculate what they are doing based on their plays. Now, have you ever played Go Fish? Just roll with it. In Go Fish, you shuffle a deck and both players draw a handful of cards. Players take turns asking the other if they have a specific card, taking it from the other if they guess right, or drawing a card if they guess wrong. Go Fish is the simplest example I can think of how to demonstrate a hidden information game. You are not allowed to know what is in the other player's hand until it is revealed to you. Each question helps you form a picture in your head of what that player is holding on to. Additionally, there is no way to know what order the deck was shuffled in, and each drawn card obfuscates the information a player has gained. These are the basics of hidden information, and almost all trading card games utilize these concepts to some extent. I'm mostly going to be talking about it in reference to Yu-Gi-Oh! Though. Now, when you sit down against an opponent in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you will not know what deck they are playing. Even if they are a good friend of yours and you know what deck they are on, there is no way for you to know the exact combination of 5 cards they drew for the start of the game. And once they start playing, there are several other elements of hidden information that will affect play. The hand, the main deck, the extra deck, excluding pendulums, and face-down cards are all generally considered to be hidden information. Cards will typically only activate in hidden information zones if they say they do, and that usually involves revealing that card while it is in that area of play. Basically, the more your opponent can hide from you, the less prepared you'll be. There are certain inferences you can make based on hidden information, though. For instance, if they only use a couple cards to make their plays, you can assume the rest of the cards in their hand are some form of non-engine or play extenders. As a player, you should strive to gather as much knowledge as possible about what your opponent is trying to accomplish during the game, and use that knowledge to aid your decision making. The issue with discussing hidden information in this way is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards do so much nowadays. A single card can get you to a monster that triggers to get you more cards, and so on and so forth. This means that even if you've been paying attention to every single action an opponent has been taking in a sequence of events, you've really only seen the consequences of 1 or 2 out of the 5 cards in your opponent's hand. This is one of the reasons it can be important to run hand traps and be aware of your opponent's once per turn effects. If you hit an opponent at a critical choke point, they won't be able to repeat the same line of actions even with the extension the rest of their hand gives them. That being said, the more cards your opponent has, the more options they have available to them. This is why I also think it's important to talk about card advantage. Card advantage is a very easily misunderstood concept in all card games, and should be talked about more. Card advantage refers to the number of resources available to you, typically in hand, but it doesn't have to be, the math involved in counting the number of resources gained or lost whenever you play a card, and how many cards you have in comparison to your opponent. I don't have a cute normal game analogy for this, so we're just going to use Yu-Gi-Oh! For the example. Imagine a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Both players currently have 5 cards in their hand and are considered even in card advantage. Player A plays an Upstart Goblin, a spell that lets them draw 1 card. As useful as this may be, Player A is still even in card advantage to the opponent because they spent 1 card to draw 1 card. They start with 5 cards, then they go down temporarily to 4 when they activate Upstart Goblin, and they go back to 5 when it resolves for a net gain of 0. I frame it this way because there's not always a guarantee that the cards you play will resolve. You are playing against somebody, so if you activate something and they choose to respond in a way that stops that, you lost out on your card advantage. Now, Upstart Goblin is a good card because it functionally increases your deck's consistency, but for the sake of this discussion, I am treating it like the baseline of how card advantage functions. Card advantage provided by individual cards can be weighed by their net positive or net negative impact on a player. Pot of Greed, as famous as it is banned. It represents a +1 in card advantage, and also effectively increases your deck's consistency in the same way Upstart Goblin does, but better. Another banned card is Delinquent Duo, a spell where you're using 1 card to remove 2 from your opponent's hand, ultimately providing you more advantage than your opponent, and giving you insight into what your opponent is playing, while also stripping them of their resources. Many people only think of card advantage in terms of the cards you have in hand, but things can get more complicated when you consider cards that stay on the field, graveyard shenanigans, and just the extra deck as a whole. Lots of cards in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Serve multiple purposes and contribute to your overall advantage in multiple ways. Here's a much more in-depth example, so bear with me. Sword Ryziel, upon summoning, can search for an X Ryziel, which can also summon itself. X Ryziel, upon summoning, can search for a 3rd Ryziel monster. When this all resolves, you remain at the same number of cards in hand you started with, but now you have 2 cards on the field that contribute to your board, meaning you're up in card advantage by 2. There are multiple pathways to go from here, but I'm only going to do the easy stuff to demonstrate my point. This isn't an optimal combo. The 2 Ryziel monsters you have can make a Ryziel Duo Drive from your extra deck. You've used 2 monsters to make 1, but Duo Drive has an effect that adds up to 2 Ryziel cards to your hand. I'm stopping here for the sake of simplicity, but I hope you can see what I'm getting at. The total number of cards available to you now is 8. That's a positive of +3 from your starting hand. You have way more options in how to proceed with your turn and interact with your opponent. Speaking of, look at this situation from the opponent's perspective. The first player now has 7 total cards in hand. 3 of them are known quantities because they were searched for over the course of the turn, but the other 4 could be anything. They could be hand traps or board breakers. They could be extension to make the board more powerful. Heck, they could even be a separate game plan entirely if the first one doesn't work out, or any combination in between. More cards means more options, and you can easily overwhelm another player if you have more cards than them. All Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks strive to do this to a certain extent, and as an opponent, you should try to prevent these engines of advantage from developing or sticking around. But in order to do that, you kinda need to know how to identify these card advantage engines when they show up in the first place. Understanding card advantage can be a bit of a struggle for some people. It's easy to come to the conclusion that card advantage is something you can brute force your way through, or rely on luck that your opponent won't draw well. But this is why I also think it's important to pair this discussion with talking about hidden information. The key takeaway I want you to get from this video is that nobody, not even you, puts bad cards in their deck on purpose. We can agree to disagree on what cards are good or bad, but every card that goes into a deck has a purpose, and that purpose is to stop you. Every card, even the ones you can't see, especially the ones you can't see, serve that purpose. Do not assume that your opponent's cards do nothing. You are allowed to take risks, but they need to be calculated. Ask yourself, what are you going to do if you get interrupted? What cards have your opponent used, and what haven't they? How many cards does your opponent have access to? And this is difficult, because cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Do so much. Every card is a paragraph. but it becomes much easier when you think of it like math. Start with what cards add to their advantage and work from there. Look out for cards that do more than they are worth, and be wary of cards that take away from your own cards and your own card advantage. Thank you for watching. I've been really enjoying making these videos so far, and I want to continue to make more. So like, subscribe, and share this video around to people who need it. Thank you.